Hello, welcome back to Engineering Economic course. In the previous lectures, we learned about different categories of costs, and in today's lecture, we will start learning some general economical terms, some basic economic concepts that are relevant to engineering economic studies. So let's get started. First, we will talk about goods and services. And basically, we can divide the goods and services into two classes. The first one is the consumer goods and services. And these are the products or services that are directly used by people to satisfy their wants. Okay? For example, all the food, the clothing, the cars that we are using, these are some examples of consumer goods. So all of us, in fact, are consumers. And the items, the goods, the services that we are using, for example, when we are going for a vacation, the airline tickets, when we go for an hospital, the service that we are taking there. These are consumer goods and services. The second category is the producer goods and services. These are the goods and services that are used in the production of other goods and services, some consumer goods and services. For example, we use machine tools, and these machine tools are used to produce cars. Okay, so these machine tools are producer goods. The producers buy these goods to produce cars for the consumers. For example, factory buildings. Factory buildings are not for the consumers. They are for the producers. The producers need the factory buildings to produce, to manufacture goods for the consumers. Buses and farm machinery. These are some examples of consumer goods. It is important to know how we value the items, what the price of an item depends on, and how we measure the economic worth of an item. For this, we need to know several terms. The first one is the utility. What is a utility? Utility is the power to satisfy human wants and needs. Okay? This is the power to satisfy human wants and needs. For example, you need a car. This is a need for you. Or you want to go for a vacation. Okay? So if there are alternative vacations. You can go a vacation to Salalah. You can go for a vacation to Turkey. You can go for a vacation to the Europe, for example. Which one will satisfy you more? Okay, depending on the satisfaction level, we say that one of the alternatives has a better utility. But in order to measure this utility, we need a measure for this utility, and usually it is measured in terms of value, and the value is something relative, changed from one person to another. It is what the consumers place on that product or service. For example, if I ask you, do you prefer to go for a vacation to Salalah or to Europe or to Turkey? Some of you may select Turkey, some of you may select Salalah, some of you may select Europe, for example. Okay, so this value depends on the consumer, and actually, even if you select the same alternative, still you may assign a different value. So this is something relative, and this value also is a measure of the worth that this person assigns to a good or service. Okay, so if I ask you, how much are you willing to pay for a vacation in Salalah? Some of you may assign a value for this. For example, they can say, I would give 1,000 riyals for a 1-week holiday in Salalah. And another one may tell, okay, I can give 1,500 riyals. Okay, so this is relative, and it is the worth that these consumers, these persons assign to these goods or services. In most engineering efforts, the purpose is to determine how physical factors may be altered to create the most utility for the least cost in terms of the utilities that must be given up. Okay, let me give an example and it will be more clear. By doing engineering, for example, we convert iron ore to steel, and then using that steel we convert it to razors. If you just consider the iron ore, maybe it's a few dollars per ton, but when you use alloying and convert this to steel and then use that steel to produce razors, and the worth of that razor is now increased, and it is not just a few dollars per ton, but it is a few hundred, or maybe it's a few $1,000s per ton. So what happened? By these engineering efforts, the utility of the item is increased. We created a higher utility, and of course, while creating this higher utility, we want to do it in the least possible cost. We can also divide these goods and services into two categories. Basically, we can say that these goods or services is a necessity for you or is a luxury for you. And of course, this is also relative. It changes from one person to another, one situation to another, one time to another. Okay, so for one person, something may be a necessity, but for another, it can be a luxury. For example, if you are living in Oman, then for your transport, having a car can be a necessity, because you know this is a wider city and there is less public transportation opportunities, so you may need a car. It may be a need for you. But if you are living a smaller city with more sophisticated public transportation options and etc., you can satisfy your transportation needs with public transportation, and buying a car can be a luxury for you. Okay, so we can divide these items into being necessity or a luxury. For example, here in Oman, having some snow, buying or snow can be a luxury, because snow you need to bring it from somewhere else, or you need to produce it artificially. But during this winter time, if you go to a northern country, for example to Switzerland, there will be plenty of snow and it's worthless there. But if you want to bring that snow to Oman, it will have a value. It will worth something. And in this sense, what is demand? Demand is the purchased quantity, and it's a reflection of the measure of value. So let me try to make it clearer. When some item has a price, for that price there will be a demand for that item in the market. For example, in Switzerland, if you try to sell snow, no one will buy it, because everywhere is snowy and they can just buy it, they can just take it for free. But when you bring that snow to Oman and make a playground, for example, now people may want to pay for it. and depending on the price, if it is cheaper, more and more people will want it. If it is less, if it is more expensive, the number of people that want to use that facility, want to buy a product, will be reduced. So we represent this relationship with the demand curve. The demand curve plots the aggregate quantity of a good that consumers are willing to buy at different prices. Okay, so we can talk about the law of demand. And what is that? Consider there is a product and there are some people, we want to buy that product. If the price of the product is lower, do you want to buy more of the product or less of that product? Of course, it's very logical, right? If the price is less, you want to buy more. If the price is more, then you want to buy less. Of course, this depends on, by assuming, I mean here, our assumption is that we set all other things remain constant. Only the price is changing, nothing else is changing. So if the price is lower, you want to buy more. If the price is more, then you want to buy less. Okay, as price goes up, the quantity demanded goes down, and as the price goes down, the quantity demanded goes up. So we can represent this demanded quantity as a function of the price. Okay, so this representation, we are not multiplying Q by P. Okay, here it is the quantity demanded, and we want to say that it is a function of price. What kind of a function we will talk about, but it depends on the price. Okay, now consider this question. How much gasoline would you purchase at the given prices? So I'm asking to you, okay, to you, if the price per gallon is $2.5, how much gasoline you will demand? How much gasoline would you buy? You can assign a value here. Okay, so for example, you need gasoline to drive your car. It's a necessity for you. If the gasoline price is very cheap, then what you can do, you can buy more than your need, and you can travel more with your car. You can go for trips, you can go for a country tour because the price is cheaper. So you will buy more and more. But if I start increasing the price, the quantity that you demand will be less. So when you sketch the graph, the corresponding values of demanded quantity to the price, you will see that when the price is the highest, the demanded quantity will be lowest. So you can assign these values by yourself. Okay, so for example, let's assume that for $2.5 per 1 week, let's say, you will use 50 liters, okay, of gasoline. When the price is 3, so you may ask for 45 liters. 40, just a minute. Yeah, I'm trying to write with the pen, but unfortunately I cannot. Yes, okay. 45 liters. And then when the price is increased more, the quantity demanded will decrease. Okay, so maybe for $4 you will ask for 35, and then maybe 30, and then maybe 25. So this value over here may be 25, 30, but it depends on who we are asking to. So for me, these are the values. But if I ask this to you, you may fill in different values here. But the thing is, as the price goes up from 2.5 to 5, the quantity demanded will reduce from some value, we don't know, it depends on you, to another value. And usually we have such a relation between the price and quantity. Okay, so we will have such a graph between quantity and price. On the other hand, there is this supply. What is the supply? Producers, markets, the people who sell these products and goods and services. This is the supply side. And when you consider the problem, or when you look at from the viewpoint of the suppliers, again, the quantity, supplied quantity will depend on the price. And we represent this relationship with the supply curve. Okay? Similar to the demand curve, the supply curve plots the aggregate quantity of a good that will be offered for sale at different prices. Okay, so we can represent this relationship. Again, the quantity, supplied quantity, is a function of price. Okay, so in this representation, for example, this QS can be, for example, A times P, P squared plus B times P, something like this. Okay, so it's a function of price, but what kind of a function? The law of supply says that the producers or the suppliers supply more of a product at higher than at lower prices, and vice versa. So if the prices are higher, then the suppliers want to supply more and more. Producers want to supply more and more. Why? Because they are making more money if the prices are higher. But on the other hand, if you look at from the demand side, we said that if the prices are higher, then the consumers will buy less and less. So there is a relation between the supply side and the demand side. Okay? It is very important in economics, the balance between supply and demand, and the price plays the most critical role in this balance between the supply and demand. So in other words, this law of supply says that if every other thing remains the same, an increase in price results in an increase in quantity supplied. This is the law of supply. Okay, according to this, as prices goes up, the supplied quantity goes up. As prices goes down, the supplied quantity falls down. But remember the demand law, as prices goes up, the demanded quantity will go down. So there is an inverse relation in that case. And as prices goes down, the quantity demanded goes up. So there is a direct relation between price and supply, and there is an inverse relation between price and demand. So we can use the same idea to sketch the supply curve. So assume now you are not the consumer buying this gasoline for your car, but assume that you have a small oil well in your backyard. Okay, so you need some effort, you need to spend some effort to get that oil out and sell in the market, depending on the selling price of the gasoline. How much gasoline you want to supply? Okay, if the price is cheaper, you will want to supply less, let's say 25 liters per 1 week. But if the prices increase, you will spend more effort and you will supply more and more. Okay, as the price increases, the quantity that you supply increases. And if we look at this supply curve, so we will see that this is 25, 30, 35, 40, 45 and 50. As the price increases, the supplied quantity also increases, and we have such a curve, and this is called the supply curve. Now we have the demand curve and the supply curve, and we can combine these together. So the equilibrium price and quantity is determined using the supply and demand curves. Actually, this equilibrium price occurs where the supply and demand curves intersect. So, in the previous examples, we sketched the supply and demand curves on different graphs. Now let's sketch them on the same graph. So remember, this is the supply curve, which says that as the quantity increases, as the price increases, the supplied quantity increases. But on the other hand, the demand curve says that as the price increases, the demand decreases. And these are the supply and demand curves. So this is the supply curve and this is the demand curve. And the point where they intersect, which is this one, this is the equilibrium price. This price is the equilibrium price, and this quantity is the equilibrium quantity. So in a liberal economic system, in a free economic system, the price of an item is determined in this method. The intersection of the supply and demand curves gives you the equilibrium price and quantity. Okay, so as we mentioned, this price-demand relationship says that as the selling price per unit of an item, which we will represent by P, selling price, if this increases, then the demand for that product or service will decrease. If the price decreases, then the demand will increase. So while reading this sentence, you should read in this way. If the selling price increases, the demand decreases. If the selling price decreases, now reading the parentheses, then the demand will increase. Okay, and this is the relationship. When the price is P1, which is the highest price, then the quantity will be the lowest according to demand law. And when the price is the lowest, the quantity will be the highest. And this curve shows the demand relationship with respect to the price. Okay. So depending on the price, if the price is high, then the demand is low. If the price is low, then the demand is high. Okay, now we can also write these as equations. Okay, consider this case, consider this graph, and in this graph, assume that it intersects here at a price level of A. I mean, you increase the price until point A, and when the price is A, there is no demand at all. Demand is 0. Okay, so this is 0. And also, if you continue to increase this one, okay, it intersects this one here. So this A, point A, is the base or the maximum price intercept on the price axis. And this graph has a slope which is represented by B, the slope of the price demand line. We will represent the demand for the product or service with D and the price with P. So what is the equation of this line? How we can represent this line? So if, for example, let's say this is P and this is D, how we can write P in terms of D? Actually, this side is P and this side is D. The price is will be equal to, it is just the equation of the curve, equation of the line. So it is passing through this point 0 and A, and the slope is B, and you can use just your calculus knowledge to write this equation, and it is in fact A minus B times D. Okay, so this P is equal to A minus B times D. This is the equation. But of course, for example, let's see what happens if A is less than 0. What happens? So A is less than 0 means that A is somewhere here, and it indicates a negative price. What's a negative price? Negative price means that the seller, the producers, pays you if you buy that item, and it's meaningless. It means that this A cannot be less than 0. A should be greater than 0. Okay, again in this equation, what happens if B is less than 0 in this equation? If B is less than 0, remember B is the slope, and with a negative in front of that, and if B is also negative, then this part will be positive, and it means that the price will increase with respect to D. And we just learned that the law of demand says that as the price increases, the demand decreases. So this is not a valid curve, and it means that B cannot be negative. B also should be a positive value. Okay. Also, let's see what happens after this point. You see the price reduces to a negative value, and a negative price is meaningless. It is not defined. So this curve should never pass to this region. The end of the curve should be this point here. And what is this point? How we can find that point? Actually, that point is the point where P is 0. In this equation here, if you assign P equal to 0, you will find that D is equal to A over B. So if D is greater than this point over here is now A over B, and if D is greater than A over B, then this curve goes to, this curve goes to negative, and it's impossible. It means that D should be less than A over B. Okay, it cannot be less than A over B. So these are the conditions. This is the curve, and these are the conditions for this curve. And from here, in fact, if we represented the price as a function of D, but we can also represent D as a function of price, demand as a function of price. And how do we do that? In this equation, we leave D alone on the one side, and we will obtain P minus A divided by B. So this is, it should be A minus P divided by B. So this is the function of demand with respect to the price. But again, in this equation, what happens if B is 0? If B is 0, mathematically this is undefined. 0 cannot be in the denominator. So we need to add another condition here, which says that B, which is the slope of the curve, cannot be 0. So the slope of the curve, if the slope of the curve is 0, it is something like this, a horizontal one, and it means that on the same price level, we will see all possible demand values. Although the price is not changing, the demand is increasing. Okay, and it's not logical. So B, the slope, cannot be 0 as well. So we obtained these equations. We have written that this price is A minus BD. A is the intercept of the price, the maximum price, and B is the slope of this line. And we said that we have several conditions. This demand should be between 0 and A over B, and also this A, the maximum price, should be greater than 0, and also B should be greater than 0. And for using this one, we can obtain demand as a function of price in this way, in which case B cannot be equal to 0. Okay, so we can define this in terms of a statement. We can say that price equals some constant value, which is A, minus some multiple, which is B, of the quantity demanded. Okay, this is the statement of this equation. So now we learned the relationship between the price and the demand. We learned the consumer and producer goods and services, and we will continue learning several other economical terms in the following lecture.